Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
Sure. Okay. This week, we have finally got our hands onto a copy of The Evil Dead, which has not been, well, I mean, it hasn't been hard, okay, but it's not streaming for some reason.
No.
And I don't understand why. There's no reason for it not to be streaming.
I think I saw the remake streaming on
Yeah,
like Pluto
yeah.
or something.
And then again, it's Pluto. Like I watch Pluto because I don't have cable, and I'm like, yeah, let's just replicate that experience for free. I don't know, it's stupid. But yeah, like
I like the slow channel with the train.
yes, and they have a similar one at like in the holidays where it's just you're looking at Christmas lights. And
I
it's,
love that one.
That's so nice.
I can't wait.
Well, let's move from the soft, comforting glow of Christmas lights to what, as far as I'm aware of, is a very scary movie. The ultimate scary movie, Evil Dead. Okay, first of all, as I said, I'm really surprised that this is not streaming anywhere because it is a famous film. It is a groundbreaking film. It's kind of an important film in terms of horror, in terms of, being like the first big Sam Raimi film, Bruce Campbell's big breakout. This is, I mean, yeah, I know. It's kind of funny to talk about, like, oh, Bruce Campbell's big breakout role. Like,
Superstar Bruce
yeah,
Campbell.
Right.
On the red carpet right now.
He should be. Look, everybody loves Bruce Campbell. If
you mean
know,
of Bubba Hotep?
Yes.
and
he played Autolycus on Hercules and Xena. And oh my God, he's Briscoe County Jr., obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, look. So Sam Raimi, of course, is best known now for directing the Spider-Man movies and the Doctor Strangelove in the Mind of Madness or whatever the heck it's called. I don't know. Whatever. But he's most well known, if you're of a certain age, for making a series of films called the Evil Dead trilogy. And this is the first film. Now, I've seen Evil Dead 2.
Me too.
Which is great. And I've seen Army of Darkness. I've seen both versions of Army of Darkness. I have the director's cut. They're great.
Did I tell you about my Army of Darkness story? I
don't remember.
So I have a friend, Nick. Army of Darkness had come out. I think it got 4 stars or something.
Sure.
in city paper. So we were trying to convince him to go. And we're like, oh, it's a medieval movie and it's got 4 stars. He was not happy with us.
No.
We were thrilled. We were like, this is exactly what we want.
Yes. Army of Darkness is great. Evil Dead 2 is great.
Yeah.
I've never seen Evil Dead, the original, though, for 2 reasons. First reason, I've always heard it's incredibly scary. And I am a coward. I mean, it's not that I don't like horror films. I do. I love the old, Universal horror movies. Like the The Bride of Frankenstein are 2 of the greatest films ever made. The original Dracula, The Wolfman, like all that stuff. Like the original Universal horror films are great. I like other horror films. I love The Haunting, right? I love, was it The House on Haunted Hill or whatever the hell it's called? The one with Vincent Price, it's fun. That's a fun one. I like the Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies. I love The Wicker Man. Like it's not that I don't love horror films.
What about Midsummer?
Midsummer's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I'm going to revisit it soon, but I left during Midsummer, okay? Because in a way you can read it as a dark comedy. In a way you can read it as a parable about people falling into like white supremacy. It's a fascinating movie. It's great. It's not that I don't love horror movies, but I am kind of weird about them. Mm-hmm. I don't seek out David Cronenberg films, although we just watched Dead Zone. It was great.
So you've seen Halloween, the first Halloween?
Yes, I have.
What'd you think?
It's great. Yeah, I mean, look, I like Carpenter. Carpenter doesn't put himself out there as a guy who is a big thinker, but I don't feel like his films are lazy. Well, they get lazy eventually, but
And you saw part of, at least, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I have. I've seen like the last half hour.
Right.
It was fantastic.
But you haven't had like the full 2 hours to
No.
be sucked in and be scared and that kind of thing. Okay.
No. Again, seemed too scary. And like, when I say it seems too scary, it's funny because it's just like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I sat through all of like hated the G.G. Allen story or whatever it's called. Like it's not that I won't put myself through like a type of torture, but yeah, I don't know. Evil Dead, it's always kind of intimidated me.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different horror movies. There's slasher films, which was kind of like the primary 80s film.
And which don't really do anything for me. Although I liked when we saw Nightmare on Elm Street last year.
Right.
That actually, I enjoyed that. That was good.
And that was clever. It kind of like was a new spin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I have no interest in stuff.
Slightly supernatural.
Yeah. But I have no interest in things like Saw, Hostel, like that kind of stuff. It's just torture porn. I and a lot of horror has kind of become that, or it's a lot of jump scares. And I'm not against a jump scare, although if it's an entire movie of jump scares, that seems equal parts like stressful and boring, and I'm just not terribly interested. Now, Sam Raimi is not jump scares over and over and over again in the same way, right?
Right.
I mean, I've seen Sam Raimi films, I've seen the Spider-Man movies, and I've seen like the other Evil Dead films, and I'm trying to think. What
Did you see Darkman? Is it Darkman?
Yeah, here's the funny thing. I've never seen Darkman, although I want to see Darkman. I wanted to see Darkman, actually, when it came out, but I was only like, I don't know, 10, 11 years old at the time.
Oh.
But I went as Darkman one Halloween because it was a really easy costume. So I've never seen Darkman, but I did dress up as Darkman once.
That counts.
Yeah.
You've seen it. Don't
yeah,
worry.
right, sure. Okay.
If you were it, then you've seen it.
Yeah, right. But like, so I didn't see that. I didn't see Quick and the Dead. I did not see that little series he had on Quibi. Did anyone see that on Quibi?
What's that?
Yeah, thank you. You don't even remember what Quibi is, do you?
No, I remember Quibi. I don't remember him doing something.
He had a little horror anthology on there that is one of the few things that I believe has been salvaged from Quibi. I feel like Roku may have bought it, and it might be on the Roku channel, provided that's a real thing, and I'm a little iffy on that. But
who killed Quibi? Was that millennials again? I forget who that one guy was complaining like.
Oh, it probably was.
Yeah.
Who? What was it? Was that like Jeffrey Katzenberg or somebody who started Quibi? And it's just like, why is this not going anywhere? I don't know, because you can only watch on your phone, but you have to hold your phone for 11 minutes at a time. Why am I going to do that? So unfortunately, Sam Raimi, he got sucked into that. But I mean, it's fine, because what did he do after that? He went and made, the Doctor Strange movie that was like big, and it's Disney and whatever. So don't cry for Sam Raimi. He's doing fine. Okay. But so here we are to watch a Sam Raimi film, and I'm a little afraid of it because I have a feeling this is going to be more intense than Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness, which are both funny movies. I mean, they're horror movies, but like, come on, Bruce Campbell fighting a little army of like having to fight his own hand, and I seem to remember there's like an army of little hymns or something. At one point, he has to fight off and getting stuck in the Middle Ages. This is my boomstick. Like, those are fun movies.
Yeah.
My impression is that this is not fun in the same way.
Evil Dead 2, is definitely scarier. Like Army of Darkness was just cartoon.
Yes.
It was straight up cartoon.
Yes.
And Evil Dead 2 was like funny, but it definitely seemed to have a little bit more grounded.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, how could it not be?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Although, again, Grounded is a movie where Bruce Campbell chops off his own evil hand,
Right,
and replaces it with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
So let's put the pin in that word, grounded.
Realistic is what I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
Like something that would actually happen. You also seen, was it Dead Alive or Brain Dead or whatever that
the Peter Jackson
Peter
one?
Jackson one where I kick ass for the Lord.
Yeah. Great movie.
It's great.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it in 20-something years, but I enjoyed it.
But that one had no scares. That was just gross out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this is scary or if this is gross or if this is scary gross or like what I'm getting myself into here. But I know it's kind of an important film because, this is kind of Sam Raimi's big breakout.
Is this the one the Coen brothers worked on?
I think so. Yeah. Like, I know they had something to do with it, like, not in a huge way. Like, this is before they made Blood Simple or anything like that. But I do think the Coen brothers, I don't know if they, like, helped edit this or did... I don't know exactly what they did. But so... it's important that way, and that this is kind of how they got their foot in the door. And the Coen brothers are, some of my favorite filmmakers ever. That's important to me. But I've just never been able to bring myself to watch the original Evil Dead because everything I've been told is that it is a very scary movie and not as fun.
What's the most scared you've been at a movie or of a movie?
I remember watching Poltergeist when I was about 14. And it was a sunny day in the middle of summer, and I'm just sitting in my living room or basement or whatever. The point is, it was not a scary situation. It was a very calming situation, but I remember being extremely freaked out watching Poltergeist, especially the scene where she falls into the pool and the bodies start popping up. Yeah. And of course, later finding out those are real skeletons, like real dead humans that are popping up around her, actual corpses, because that's just what movies used to do and probably still do, is just buy corpses.
Do we know if they did that or not?
No, we know.
In Raiders, I mean.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Thing.
I'm pretty sure it's the same
Sorry,
thing.
Carrie.
You're actually looking at
Allen.
you're looking at real dead human beings in Steven Spielberg's movies. Yes. So that's the most scared I've been probably watching a film is Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that
I
counts.
think that's a pretty good answer, to be honest. Alien, very terrifying movie. Absolutely.
I feel like those are the best horror films that can scare you in the middle of the day.
Yes. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Are we ready to watch this one?
We are.
Oh, okay.
Let's go.
Sure.
No one told you life was gonna be this way. Your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the away. It's like you're always stuck in second gear when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you. When the rain starts to fall, I'll be there for you.
So a few days ago, our cat died.
Yeah.
And we are still really, really upset about it.
I guess it'll be 2 weeks when this comes out.
Yeah, when this comes out, something like that. I don't know. But when we're recording this, our cat died a couple days ago. And, we've had Murray for 18 years. And it's still a very weird thing. I keep expecting to see him in the house and everything. So the day he died, we went over to my mother's house and dug a grave for him. Digging a grave is not easy because it was by a tree. So there's roots, there's rocks.
Yeah.
A lot of rocks. And it takes a while. And we only got about a foot down, and it took over an hour to dig this like little hole for the box that he was in. So when Bruce Campbell is digging a grave in this, and he's got like a full human-sized grave, I mean, come on, man. That is easily the least realistic part of this film.
Ash is very strong.
Well, he is. I'll give you that much.
He doesn't know his own strength.
So anyway, yeah, this movie's great.
Yeah.
5 kids go off into the woods. They come across the Necronomicon. They come across a guy who is, doing an audio diary of reading the Necronomicon out loud and driving him and his wife insane.
Yeah.
And what happens is this wakes up the evil dead, although they were obviously already awake, right? But this kind of gives them all their power.
Right.
And they start first possessing all of the women. Yeah. Eventually they get to Scott. And Ash has to end up killing and dismembering everybody.
Yeah.
And he is the final girl, right?
Yep.
That's the movie. That's it. That's everything that happens. It's a real basic plot.
Although the movie makes it seem like he gets it at the end.
Well, yeah, it's a little ambiguous, I guess. But yeah, no, totally. In this original version, yeah, he dies at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, they decide to make sequels, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
Because they're so much fun. But yeah, if this was the only one, it would have been fine. What I love is like, it's so basic and obvious. It's like the classic horror movie plot. We all, this is like, we've all seen this kind of movie before.
Yeah.
What is interesting about the movie is what they do with it. Mm-hmm. Right? They really do a lot with this.
I honestly don't remember Evil Dead. I know I saw Evil Dead 2, but I don't remember it after seeing this. I'm like, wait, how does this relate to the second one?
Well, from what I remember the second one, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but what I remember of the second one, Ash returns to the cabin. Mostly I think because they just wanted to make another one.
Yeah.
And there's more dead people, deadites who attack him, and he has to chop his own hand off, and that's how he ends up with the chainsaw. Which, it's interesting because like in this, he never uses the chainsaw, does he?
He turns it on and then puts it down.
Yeah. This is a very different film from every other Evil Dead film, TV series, whatever. This is a very different tone. This is a much more straight up horror.
It's horror, but there is some elements of slapstick. It's still a little silly.
Well,
not silly, but like
it's not silly. I think it's more originally I think they wanted to do a drama. At least that's what I was just reading before we got on. That they originally wanted it to be like this drama where Ash, is feeling guilt because he's losing all of his friends to, the evil in the cabin, and he can't stop any of it. And they had this longer cut that was just so dreary, apparently, that they're like, yeah, let's just do, cut away at this and make it straight up horror.
Yeah.
This does not have any of the silliness. It has a little bit of slapstick, but it's nothing like the other films, or really even any of Raimi's other movies, I'd say.
And it's different than other horror films because there's no final girl.
No, there's a final guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, boy, how do you unpack the sexual politics of this movie?
Yeah.
Even today, Sam Raimi has expressed regret about certain things. Bruce Campbell has said, yeah, it feels really weird to watch me, beating up a woman in this movie. And I have to say, at the time, they're making this, they're really young. They're like 19, 20.
Yeah.
I don't think Sam Raimi was consciously making a misogynistic film. I don't think that was on their minds at all. But it is really interesting. Because here's the thing. Obviously, the whole point was that Bruce Campbell is the star of this.
Right.
They're childhood friends, and the whole point is he's going to be the guy who makes it through the night. A lot of this film is, and we'll talk about in a minute, an homage to Night of the Living Dead, which is also an unusual kind of horror film because that also doesn't go by those so-called rules. There's no final girl in that.
Yeah.
At the end of the film, Ben, who is a black man, survives the night, only to be killed by a militia of white dudes in Pennsylvania. Oh, I don't know. That sounds about right. And so, this is this
but
movie.
This is a non-racist state.
Anyway, yeah. So this movie, it's. I don't think they set out to make a movie where guys get to beat up and murder women. That's not the intention of the film. Consciously. It is weird that is what happens in it, though, right? And not everybody, because eventually the other guy in this film, Scott, also gets possessed, and he has to be.
But for a long time, it's just women that
just
get possessed, and on the tape that they listen to, it's the guy's wife that becomes possessed.
Yeah.
And you start to think, is this just only women get? I don't know.
And I don't think they had thought that out. It is interesting because it's sort of like what they're unconsciously doing.
So what do you think it says? Like unconsciously, what do you think?
Women,
am I right?
Well, here's the thing. I do think deep down, humans are violent animals.
Yeah.
And it used to be not unacceptable for men to deal with their frustrations by enacting violence on women. And the 20th century, part of it was about pulling back from that, right? So that if your woman got mouthy, you weren't supposed to just slap her, which was very normal. And in some places is still very normal. And I think men, can get frustrated that you're not supposed to use violence as an outlet, as like that's not normal anymore.
Right.
I'm glad it's not normal anymore. But, because look, it used to be normal to slap your kids. Beating your kids was very like normal. Heck, I think they brought back paddling in schools in Texas, right?
Jeez.
Yeah, no, I'm serious, like in the 90s. And so I think, at least unconsciously, there is probably something going on in this movie that, I'm a pessimist about human nature. I think we know that. And I think violence is something that is sort of innate in us, unfortunately. A lot of the 20th century was about trying to purge that from how we do things. And so what you end up doing is sublimating a response that if you're a chimp would be normal, right? But which shouldn't be normal. I mean, the whole point of being a human and having like our type of consciousness is that we're supposed to work beyond that, and we should not, like, it doesn't matter what your base instinct is. You're supposed to like not do that, right? I don't know. I'm not trying to say that like Sam Raimi actually wants to like hit women. I don't think that's true, but I do think it's weird that a lot of this movie is women becoming possessed and taunting the men, and the men, their only reasonable response to the situation is to kill and dismember the women.
Right.
Like, that's real weird, man. And that's on top of the fact that there is a scene where a woman is raped by vines, right?
Yeah,
that's rough, man. And that scene has been banned in some countries. Like that has been entirely cut in a lot of places. And I understand why, because it's a really visceral scene, man. It is tough to watch. The scene where towards the end of the movie, the decapitated Linda climbs on Ash and looks like she's basically trying to rape him.
Yeah.
That's been cut apparently in a lot of places, in a lot of versions. So yeah, there are some sexual politics in this that it's hard not to think about, but I don't think it was the intent of the people who made the movie to make a misogynistic film.
Right.
All I can say is I think it's a part of American culture to deep down think violence is the way to solve everything. And when you have a class of people that you're not supposed to be enacting violence on anymore, you sublimate your desire in other ways, and you end up making movies like this. Oh, that sounds bad. That sounds really bad. I don't know, man. I don't know how to unpack the whole Evil Dead problem. But here's the thing. Neither do the people who made it, I think.
Right.
That's why...
Because they're like in 20,
They're 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
Okay?
They don't know what they're doing.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I don't think when they made it at the time, they knew that this is really bad.
Mm-hmm. I think they thought more about how to make it scary.
Yes, exactly.
I think so. There's this poster of what, The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah.
And that was in reference, I guess, in The Hills Have Eyes has a poster of Jaws.
Right.
And the idea behind that was like, oh, we're scarier than Jaws. And this movie was saying, well, we're scarier than The Hills Have Eyes.
And I think there is something scary when you are in a culture that is saying, you're not supposed to use violence to solve your problems, especially when your problems are with women. That there's something scary about a moment where suddenly you have to throw that training out the window.
Yeah.
Right? It is scary to then say, oh my God, I have to kill and dismember my sister and my girlfriend. Mm-hmm. That's a terrifying prospect. That,
And he doesn't.
Well, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't dismember her because...
her head comes off. How does her head come off? Doesn't he chop it off?
That's kind of in defense.
Yeah.
She's leaping on him and he pulls up the shovel.
Yes.
And then... whoosh.
Yeah, but he still does it.
Yeah.
But
I'm saying like his role as the final girl, because the final girl, she's always like a virgin, she's nice,
yeah,
or everyone else is like a typical teenager.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of has some of those qualities.
Yeah,
like he's kind of he's nicer than Scott. The other
Scott
guy.
sucks. Yeah,
and he's always trying to be the nice guy.
Yeah. No, Ash is the hero, and he is exactly that. He is a nice guy in this movie. He obviously he loves his girlfriend. He's gotten her a gift. He's playful. He's an entirely sympathetic character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of weird to be watching a movie where the sympathetic character has to murder people who, I mean, they're already dead. They're possessed or whatever. I mean, there's no saving them. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the movie gives you an allowance for violence against people that normally you're not supposed to want to do violence to.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the whole thing about horror. Horror is about confronting your own negative emotions and desires. But yeah, so like this movie is interesting because it's definitely playing with some really nasty undercurrents. But I don't know. I don't think that harms the film at all, weirdly.
So what do you like about the film?
Oh my God, visually, it's fascinating. I love how Raimi loves camera tricks. I don't know, is he the Orson Welles of horror? And the reason I say that, I mean, I'm not just, making a joke, but he uses a lot of deep focus in the same way that Welles used it in Citizen Kane, where you have, part of the screen is something that is very close to the camera, like very close to the viewer in a sense. But there's also like this deep focus, like stuff way in the background that's also being focused on, so that you kind of, your eye is being forced to kind of take in like two environments at once, or like this entire scene, and it sort of keeps you on your toes the whole time, because it's, so often, the background will get kind of blurred out, like just visually, like like actual camera focus, but also like where you as the viewer, your attention is going. And this film doesn't let you do that. This film, yes, you'll have somebody in the foreground doing something, like they're playing cards or listening to a tape, but then at the same time, the background, there will be something off in the corner that is also in sharp focus, and really it's just waiting for the moment that your attention is supposed to be on. Like, your attention is always sort of like moving around because of the way that he uses that camera trick. But it's not just that. The film opens with, you brought up Jaws a second ago, because of The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes, I should say. And the opening of the film mimics Jaws. Instead of being underwater and we're basically the shark, right? This opens with, we're in the woods and we are, I assume, one of the demons. Yeah. And it just is constantly like moving in through the woods in the same way that, the opening of Jaws is moving through the water, so that we are immediately with the monster before we're ever with anybody else. So there's things like that. There's a lot of stuff where they're using, and I don't know why I guess I saw this somewhere. Maybe it was like when I saw like Evil Dead 2 or something. I watched a documentary maybe. I know what they did was they put the camera on like 2x4s and then just like ran with 2x4s through the woods.
And I think that was Sam and Bruce Campbell doing that too.
Bruce Campbell, he's the star of this. He apparently is like half the crew too. Yeah. There's a lot of really cool visual stuff in this. And like, that's not even talking about the stop motion melting of the bodies towards the end, which as I'm watching, I'm just like, oh, this must be Peter Jackson's favorite movie. It's very gross, but it's really well done. It's so fun to look at. There's a thing with like, there's a full moon that is so unrealistic, where they're obviously doing a composite shot where, you have this giant moon in the background at times, some like with clouds going over it and everything, like shining, in front of the cabin and whatnot. Like, it's a very weird sort of spooky look, and he does it a couple of times, and it's like this is not a shot that you could have like normally. The world doesn't look like this, but it looks great. Like, visually, it's a good looking movie, especially when you consider the shoestring budget they're working on. Yeah. This was a completely independently made movie. This was financed by like Bruce Campbell putting up his parents' house, for like a mortgage or something, so that they could film it on 35 millimeter. This is so much in like the tradition of independent film, really. I brought up Night of the Living Dead, and it's the same sort of thing. Night of the Living Dead was just George Romero and putting it all together, and this is the same sort of thing. This is Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell just throwing any money they could find at it in order to make it. And it looks great when you consider how much money they did not have. I don't know, there's something almost charming about the handmade quality in a way.
Sure.
You know, I love it so much more than like a bunch of CGI being thrown at me.
It has a little bit of the look of, like, say, Suspiria.
Yes.
You know, like, the extreme lighting and, like the flowing curtains and...
With all of the blood, this is very much in the tradition of like the Italian giallo or giallo horror films. You know, this is a gooey movie.
Yeah.
I mean, this is definitely one of the bloodiest movies I've ever seen. It's so good.
Eyes are gouged.
Oh, out vile jellies. Yeah, man. When he goes and puts his thumbs into Scott's eye sockets, boy, just describing that is fun.
So is it like gross though?
Yeah.
I mean not gross, but I mean, is it like? I feel like it's you're almost desensitized to it because of how much there is. I mean, it's certainly the case for Peter Jackson's stuff. Like that stuff is just so over the top. Like, like wielding a lawnmower on zombies.
I think what helps is that this, until you get to like the last maybe 20 minutes, it kind of ebbs and flows. There are times where it's just it gets gross. You see, I guess it's Cheryl, trapped in the basement with the, she has the makeup and everything. But you then are able to pull back from that and be normalized for a little while, so that I think because it's not just like constantly getting grosser and grosser until you get to the end when Ash is the only one who's alive.
Yeah.
And then it just lets loose. But before that, it gives you chances to kind of pull back so that you're kind of grossed out again. So that, I guess by the end, there is just so much blood and goo and like grossness of it that I guess you do get a little desensitized to it at the very end. But I think most of the film is able to kind of sustain your disgust, or you don't get overwhelmed until the end.
Yeah. For me, the worst part was the pencil on the ankle.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just keeps on going. Like, it's just jabbed in there and moving around, and it's there's something about that just like, ee.
Well, you know why that one's the worst? Because that's the most realistic one.
Yeah.
Hands are getting like bitten off, and all kinds of like bizarre, viscera and everything. But the pencil being stabbed into the ankle, that looks realistic enough.
Yeah.
And that is a thing that deep down somebody could actually do to you.
I don't want that to happen.
No, you don't.
Please don't.
But I think that's why that one really kind of sticks with you.
Yeah.
Is because that's realistic.
Yeah.
And throwing that in the middle of this, again, it's one of those things where like that makes it kind of hit harder. Mm-hmm. When the whole house is just like filling up with blood. I mean, it basically takes like The Shining, and you could do the elevator. I'm going to do an entire house. The pipes burst and there's blood everywhere. There's blood, running inside of a light bulb, inside of a movie projector. I mean, it gets insane. And and again, like I just sat there and just like, oh, that whole, like, I know what blood smells like. This is. I could smell this movie, which is kind of a weird feeling, but yeah, man, I really could.
So the Necromonicon, although it's called
Necronomicon,
but it's called something else in the like Naturum de Monto or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a Sumerian version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Yeah, well, okay. Shall we talk about like this film's connection to things like
Lovecraft?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I completely forgot, and I don't know why I forgot, because I've seen the other movies. Mm-hmm. I completely forgot about the Necronomicon, and I forgot that this is all tied in with Lovecraft. I mean, it doesn't beat you over the head with it, and it doesn't say, by the way, this refers to, like, if you know anything about Lovecraft and you've heard of the Necronomicon, then, yes, it is related to all of that. And I don't know. This is probably the best version of that on screen. I don't know. I haven't seen what is it? The Mountain of Madness or something like that? Didn't like Carpenter do a? I feel like he did something that was supposed to be a Lovecraft.
I thought Del Toro was supposed to, and then it fell through, or I don't know.
Well, that wouldn't be the first time that happened to him, but
yeah.
Yeah. I think in the other films, like the book itself is larger. Much larger. Yeah. This is small. This is like the size of like a paperback.
Plus, it's like animated and yells at you and stuff like that in other movies. But.
Yeah, this mostly doesn't do anything until they set it on fire, at which point, the tongue comes out and it starts licking itself. It's pretty great. Yeah, there's some fun stop motion animation in this movie. This comes from Lovecraft. It also, in a way, it's a descendant of the movie The Mummy, the original. It's playing off of the whole idea of if you have ancient spells in a book and you read it aloud, then bad things are going to happen. Although, let me tell you, as somebody who has actually read some of those ancient books, it takes more than just reading the names. You got to set up the right environment and do all sorts of.
Did you read it out loud or would you just read it to yourself?
Well, there's an interesting question. In the reality of these movies, does it matter if you're just reading it to yourself in your head? Or do you have to actually say these things out loud? Do you have to
say it out loud?
Right. But here's the thing. Do you need to say it, just read it aloud, or do you have to do other things like, I don't know, light certain candles and have certain incense?
Nope,
and,
just read it out loud.
See, but that's not how it really works if you read an actual grimoire. If you read it, if you read the Greek magical papyri or the Key of Solomon or, I don't know, the Ars Goetica or whatever, I've looked at, actual grimoires and, it's a little bit more complicated than I just open a book and read out some names. I have a couple different copies of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which, by the way, does not do what this movie would say it does. Okay, that's number one.
I don't think you tried it out loud.
I'm not going to be able to summon Bast or whatever. If I just sit and read, that's not what the point of the Book of the Dead. That's number one. Number two, there is no Sumerian version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. For one thing, the Sumerians came first. Probably. I don't know. Now you're getting into a complicated thing. But the Sumerian writing is the oldest writing that we have. And I have a whole book of translations of Sumerian. If you want me to get it down and start reading from it. I mean, it's mostly things like Gilgamesh. I mean, it's pretty great. You want me to?
Nah, that's fine.
Okay. Do you want me to go and get some of my grimoires?
Nah, that's all right. I don't feel like getting stabbed in the ankle with a pencil.
But no, I mean, I love how this movie is very much rooted in classic horror tropes. I mean, I hate the word tropes. I hate that, but themes. We'll say themes. I like how it's rooted in that, so that it's playing off of things like Lovecraft or who is it? Arthur Machen, if I remember his name right. He's a Welsh, horror writer, or M.R. James, guys like that. This is sort of, I don't know, this is kind of almost like American folk horror in a way, except that it's Sumerian, but it's sort of along those idea of, you go into a cabin in the woods and bad things will happen to you,
Never go into a cabin in the woods.
Right.
Stay in your cities.
I mean, that is American lore, is if you leave your cities, if, these kids left Michigan and went down to Tennessee and now you're way out in the woods in the middle of nowhere and that's where bad things happen to you. Yeah. And, it doesn't matter. This is American mythology, whether you're talking about The Evil Dead or Deliverance or even The Shining. This movie is not that different from The Shining, really. It's definitely pulling from a lot of other films that are considered classics. And what gets me is it pulls it off, man.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an homage to, or it references things like Jaws and The Shining, which are these big budget, classic films, or groundbreaking independent horror films like Night of the Living Dead. This uses a lot of Night of the Living Dead, right? The setup is kind of the same, where, or really, it's more of an inversion of Night of the Living Dead, because, whereas people are seeking refuge in that cabin in that film in order to escape the evil which is outside, in this, which ends up coming inside the cabin, of course. In this, the cabin is already evil. I like how it kind of inverts that film. It takes all these things, and this is being made by kids. This movie is being made by guys who are 20 years old. And it's so well done, and it's so smart. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This it's weird to say this, but man, this movie brings me joy. When you sit and really start thinking about how this was made, how young they were, and what a miserable time, and just everybody got injured on this set. I mean, this was a bunch of kids making a movie in the woods, and I'm saying that, and it's not that there weren't professionals there. I mean, there were. But at the same time, they are kids in the woods making a movie, and they're making it so well. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's punk rock, man. I'm serious.
How would you compare this to, say, Blair Witch Project?
I like the Blair Witch Project.
I do too.
That's an extremely effective horror movie.
Yeah.
I think the Blair Witch Project owes a lot to the spirit of The Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, they're different. I mean, one's a found footage film, the other's like traditional narrative film. But I think the Blair Witch Project is very much in the spirit of something like The Evil Dead, especially in the way that it was made. Yeah.
Like, it sounds like some of the shots, like, Sam Raimi just kind of came up with on the spot.
Yeah.
The camera angle ones that really got me was at the end, where just suddenly, like, we see the back of Ash's head. It's upside down. Everything, like, the camera's going all over the place.
Oh my gosh.
That was pretty amazing.
And then there's also just little things he does that he didn't have to do, but that really helped the mood of the film. Like, when I guess it's Ash and Cheryl try to leave the first time in the car, right? And they get stuck because the bridge is out. And they leave the car. To the viewer, the car is still like kind of level. Mm-hmm. But when they get out of the car, they're all walking at this weird slant, this weird angle that just like you visually, it feels so strange to watch and it's so off. And, obviously what they did was actually the camera and the car were on a slant and they just were walking normally. But it looks like they're at a weird angle because where they are, this is, again, going back to Lovecraft, it's all this non-Euclidean geometry of space where, like, the geography does not make sense, in any rational way. So that, your brain is kind of going, oh my God, what am I even seeing here? Why aren't they walking normally? And, so I just love that they just came up with that on the fly.
Yeah.
And he didn't even have to throw that scene in there. They could have done that scene straight and they didn't. And that's just because Raimi just, I don't know, he loves to throw this stuff in.
Yeah.
And he comes up with it right then and there and it just makes the movie better. It's so good. It's so good.
It was good.
So that was The Evil Dead, written and directed by Sam Raimi, starring Bruce Campbell, Ellen Sandweiss, Richard D. Manticore? Yeah. I guess he's not a manticore. Richard D. Manticore, Betsy Baker, and Teresa Tilley, and a host of what they call fake shemps, which is, basically zombie stand-ins.
Yeah, pretty much they hired a bunch of actors, like, in Detroit.
Yeah.
And brought them down, tortured them for like a week or so in this freezing cabin, like that they all slept in the same room and hated each other.
Sounds absolutely miserable.
And then, like, the actors left, and then they just had the crew like stand in for them for later shots. So.
Yeah, the second half of the movie, once everybody's kind of dead and it's just Ash battling, the Deadites, that's all like other people in makeup.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? One thing we didn't bring up. This is the movie. I don't think we ever hear Ash's full like first name in any of the other movies.
Oh, Ashley?
Ashley.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm just like, oh, his name's Ashley.
Yeah,
I guess that is a real name, huh? I'm so used to him just being Ash.
And is Shelley his sister? Or
Cheryl.
Okay. Yeah.
Cheryl is his sister. Shelley is Scotty's girlfriend. Linda is Ash's girlfriend. Yeah. So, yeah, that movie rocked.
Yeah.
Is it controversial? Does it have some issues?
Yeah.
Sure. But that's the best horror does. You can follow us on social media. We are Mary vs. Movies on Twitter and maryvsmovies@gmail.com. Please write to us with any comments, questions, complaints, or suggestions. We would love to hear from you. We are now on Instagram, where you can follow us. And, it's just another social networking thing. I like to take pictures, stills from movies, and put them up. And that's always fun for me to do. It's just an extra thing. Yeah. And, we have a Patreon where you can help support the show because it does cost money. We had to go and buy the DVD for this movie because it is not streaming. So it's things like that. I didn't even get into it, but we had a whole host of problems just playing the DVD because everything that you use to play a DVD now has to be connected to the internet, which means you have to constantly be downloading software. Anyway, not getting it. Anyway, point is, we have a Patreon if you feel like supporting the show. We're about to send out all of our stickers and buttons to the people who support us. And, like I said, it just helps cover the cost of the show. Anyway, oh yeah, we are available on all of the major platforms, by the way. We are on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review us, where we've gotten some very nice reviews. Thank you very much for those. We are on Google Play and Stitcher and Spotify, and, you know, you can go to the Libsyn website and get our RSS feed and plug it into whatever your podcatcher of choice is. Yeah, next week.
I think next week is The Lost Boys.
Yeah, if Ambler Theater is still showing that, because I think they're going to show that as like on 35 millimeter or whatever. Hopefully the next episode will be The Lost Boys. That will be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so until next time.
For God's sake, what happened to her eyes?